Hello everyone, and welcome to Throwing in the Towel, the weekly series where I take a hard look at the NFL's losers and decide which team's season is officially cooked. I'll go division by division, crown an AFC rep, an NFC rep, and finally pick the one team to throw in the towel on this week. And we start, per usual, in the AFC East, which has the Jets and the Dolphins this week. And following a players-only meeting, the Dolphins came out sluggish in Week 2, falling behind 12-0 in the first quarter. For head coach Mike McDaniel and anyone involved in that meeting, that's a troubling sign for the remainder of the season. At 0-2, the Dolphins are in a tough spot with a road trip to Buffalo coming up on Thursday. The Jets' 32-point output in Week 1 may have been a mirage. Last Sunday, their offense laid an egg in front of the home crowd, accumulating just 154 total yards. Even more troubling, quarterback Justin Fields went into concussion protocol during the fourth quarter. Fields, assuming he's able to take the field again in Week 3, he must develop a more efficient pocket passer, or develop into a more efficient pocket passer to avoid over-reliance on his legs, which exposes him to more hits. In the AFC North, we have the Steelers and the Browns. And for the Browns, is it time for a quarterback change in Cleveland yet again? It sure feels like it. After an 0-2 start, the organization has to ask itself what a 40-year-old Joe Flacco brings to the table if the team continues to lose. The Browns are now 3-18 since the calendar flipped to January in 2024. And for the Steelers, the honeymoon period ended quickly for quarterback Aaron Rodgers. The Steelers are now 1-1, and the 41-year-old didn't play anywhere near as well in Week 2 as he did during opening weekend. To be fair, there's clearly still more in Rodgers' tank than initially believed. However, the Steelers may not be as good as they hope to be, with a growing concern along their defensive interior. In the AFC South, we have every team but the Colts, and we start with the Titans, and this is a team with a ton of potential that could string together some quality wins later in the season. However, it remains to be seen if A, Brian Callahan is really the right head coach to guide Cam Ward long term, and B, if Tennessee's offensive line can keep the rookie on the field and upright all season. The Jaguars' Week 1 win over the Panthers looks like a total mirage after Sunday's meltdown against the Bengals. Trevor Lawrence continues to play below expectations, and Liam Cohen didn't seem thrilled with his quarterback's performance in Cincinnati. If the Jags can't lead with their offense, they're going to have a hard time even contending in their own division. And for the Texans, after being the surprise team of 2023, the Texans took a step backwards in 2024. Rebounding in 2025 is proving to be incredibly difficult. Houston's offensive line continues to struggle at the most inopportune times, and its backfield could use an upgrade. Penalties are also a massive problem for the second straight week. Over in the AFC West, we have every team but the Chargers, and we start with the Raiders. Despite the fact that no one was open essentially all game long, Raiders offensive coordinator Chip Kelly made the run game an afterthought. Instead, Geno Smith attempted 43 passes, threw 3 interceptions, and had a passer rating south of 40. Defensively, the Raiders got next to no pressure on Justin Herbert. 2 games into the season, it's hard to tell whether the Raiders can't run the ball or just don't want to. For the Broncos, it's gut check time. The Broncos didn't play well in Week 1 against the Titans, and they were outplayed by the Colts in Week 2. Denver's next 3 games could be pivotal: at the Chargers, home against the Bengals, and on the road against the reigning champions. And for the Chiefs, it's not just that this team is 0-2 for the first time since Patrick Mahomes became the starting quarterback. It's how they are losing that is worrisome. They can't run the ball. The downfield passing game has all but vanished without Rashid Rice and Xavier Worthy. Even star tight end Travis Kelce has made disastrous plays in back-to-back games. Yes, it's the Chiefs, and yes, they have earned some benefit of the doubt. So that does it for the AFC losers this week. Who will be the division representatives? Well, we go to that slide and we see that we have the Dolphins repping the East, the Browns repping the North, the Titans repping the South, and the Raiders repping the West. Of these 4 teams, who will be representing the AFC this week? It's going to be the Tennessee Titans. Cam Ward had a slightly better showing in Week 2. He threw a touchdown pass, but overall, still not a great performance from him. Certainly not one to define him as a franchise quarterback, although I don't think we should be too worried about that at this point in time. Good news, their defense is still playing well. but they could only hold up for so long before Matthew Stafford and the Rams would eventually carve them up. Over to the NFC side of things, and we start per usual in the East with the Commanders and the Giants. And for the Giants, another week brought another loss and another step toward a full-time look at rookie Jackson Dart. The difference this week was that the Russell Wilson-led offense actually looked like one that could win some games in 2025, which head coach Brian Daboll desperately needs, because if New York can't show some real growth, he will be out before Dart's rookie season is over. And for the Commanders, throughout the offseason, they felt like a strong candidate to regress. Winning close games late was their MO a year ago, and that recipe is rarely sustainable. Thursday's game against the Packers was not close, and serves as a reminder that the Commanders may still be a year or two away from being top title contenders. They're only in year 2 with Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels, so expect growing pains to still persist. Over north, we have the Vikings and the Bears, and we start with the Bears. And while most of the outside discussion about the Bears will be about quarterback Caleb Williams and his slow development, defensive coordinator Dennis Allen's unit has fallen apart over his last 5 quarters of play. There are legitimate concerns about Williams' accuracy and decision-making in the pocket, but Chicago's defense is a bigger issue right now. And for the Vikings, J.J. McCarthy's buzz fizzled out as the Falcons' defense made life difficult for him in the pocket. In addition to taking 6 sacks, he threw 2 interceptions and left a ton of yards on the field with missed throws and poor ball placement. And now he will sit out week 3 with an ankle injury he picked up in the loss to the Falcons. That said, keep his struggles in perspective. He's only made 2 starts. The Vikings supporting cast will need to elevate him in an up and down season. Over in the South, we have a lone representative, that being the Saints. And if you're into moral victories, then the Saints have actually been something of a pleasant surprise 2 weeks into the season. They have been in position to win both of their games. Of course, moral victories don't mean a whole lot in the NFL, and while Spencer Rattler hasn't played badly, he's not the long-term answer under center in the Big Easy. So then we move on to the NFC West, which has no representatives this week. All 4 teams picked up a win, so they are free and clear of the segment for this week. So then that takes us to the NFC division reps this week, with the Giants representing the East, the Bears representing the North, and the Saints representing the South. So recapping week 2, the AFC rep is the Titans, the NFC rep is the Saints. That is your throwing in the towel Super Bowl matchup for this week, the Titans versus the Saints. Keep that in mind. And before we get to this week's team, we're going to get to the recap segment. So the NFC rep is the Saints. And I mean, listen, Spencer Rattler has not been playing terrible. He's been making some plays, but the New Orleans Saints have just not been able to close out games. They make mistakes towards the end that end up costing them. So the recap, week 1, as you recall, it was the Carolina Panthers that the towel was thrown in on. Tough loss against the Cardinals. They made a comeback, and they certainly made it interesting, but they were unable to close out the game. And when I watched that game, I had a thought, because I said last week I didn't know if Dave Canales or Bryce Young would be back next season. I think if one of those guys were to go, it would be Bryce Young. So that is the recap, and now we move on to this week's team, and the official towel throw for week 2 goes to the New Orleans Saints. We are staying in the NFC South, and we're just getting another team that's not going to contend out of the way. I'll give them credit. They show a little bit of a spark, they show a little bit of a fight, but the future is quite bleak in New Orleans. They have a lot of veteran players that are playing well on that team, but they're not able, as I said, they're making mistakes and not able to close out games. And I think that's kind of what we all expected from them. I don't know what Tyler Shuck will do for this team, if anything, but I'd imagine at some point he is going to get starts for this team. Not that it will matter in terms of making this a winning football team, I don't think. I guess we'll have to see. To be determined on that. But that is this week's team, the New Orleans Saints. And that does it for this week's episode of Throwing in the Towel. Tune in next week to see who Week 3's team will be.